Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. Spellbinders has a brand new release called Propegation Garden. There are a ton of goodies in this collection. That one was Tropical Leaves, and it's a better press plate and die set. Then we had the Leafy Helix embossing folder and the Propagation Garden frames die set. There's also the Propagated Plants die set that goes with the frames, as well as some Propagation Garden sentiments. And this is a great stamp set that also includes coordinating dies to cut them out. And last but not least is what I'm going to use in this video. It's the Laboratory Glassware. Now I have many ideas for this whole collection, so there's going to be several different videos coming out. But for this one, I'm going to do a chemistry themed card. As soon as I saw this Laboratory Glassware, my first thought was it would be so fun to create a water shaker card. And this is something that I saw many years ago. And as soon as I saw these dies, it came to mind and I thought it would be so fun to use it for this. So I'm going to make a larger card. So this is going to be a 5x7 card. My piece of cardstock here is 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. If I were to do this again, I would cut it a little bit smaller than this, probably about 4.5 by 6.5, and I'll bring up later why I would do that. I also have some Ziploc bags here, and you just need ones that are bigger than the dies. So we're going to cut openings in the front of this piece, and you're going to eventually put these Ziploc bags behind this die cut cutouts here. So I want to make sure that they are placed evenly across the front of this card, and I also want to make sure that they are even, but I also want to give room for each one of those Ziploc bags so that you don't get an edge of a Ziploc bag inside the window of another laboratory glass opening. So I chose 3 of the different dies here. You can choose whichever ones you want. I chose to do different shapes, but if you wanted, you could easily do 3 of exactly the same shapes. It'd be a little bit harder to space it out like I did here, because you'd have to do the die cutting for each of the openings separate, but it's absolutely doable. So once I have those dies taped in place, I just put that through my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine to cut out those openings. Now this die set also has little dies to put the marks on the sides of the little beaker glasses, or I know one of them is called a beaker. I don't know what the other ones are called. So I'm cutting that in black because I want those to be visible, and I want them to be just nice and stark against what I am doing here. So the other thing I need is a piece of acetate. Now I have a piece of acetate that is just smaller than my white piece of cardstock here. You don't necessarily need one that's this big. It just needs to be big enough to cover those openings for your glassware. So I wanted to make sure that it was good and covered, and I'm using some strong double-sided tape in order to tape that in place. So I put some of the tape between each one of those openings, as well as on the top and on the bottom. I want to make sure that that's nice and secure and it's not going to go anywhere. Once I have that acetate in place, I'm going to glue those black die cuts with the little measurements for the side of the glassware. I'm just using my tweezers to hold those pieces, and then I'm using some liquid glue with a really fine tip bottle in order to get that glue on the back there and make sure that I don't have too much. So I did put it down the side, or the main side of the die cut, and then I put a tiny little bit on each one of those pieces that go out, the markers that go out, because I wanted to make sure that that was glued down and it wasn't going to catch on anything. After I have all 3 of these in place, I'm going to put an acrylic block on it just to hold it down while it dries, while I'm working on other things. Now, because I'm gluing this on top of acetate, the acetate is non-porous, so it's going to take a little bit longer for that glue to dry because it's only gluing from the one, or from the top, but it's a tiny die cut, so it really doesn't take that long. Now, inside each one of these Ziploc bags, I have a different colored distress reinker. These are just dye-based reinkers, and then I also have some mica powder. You could do all 3 of your beakers, or however many beakers you're doing. You could do them all exactly the same colors. I thought it would be fun to do different colors. So I'm putting some water in each one of these Ziploc bags, and we're not filling it to the top. I'm filling it to maybe 1/4 or 1/3. I want, when I close this, to have very little air in here, and I want it to be fairly flat. It doesn't need to be dimensional. I put a drop of the dye-based reinker, and this is distress. It could be whatever reinker you want in there, and then just a little scoop of that mica powder. Now the cool thing with that mica powder is as this card sits when it's propped up, that mica powder is going to settle to the bottom of the little mixture. So you're just going to get the color of the water with the drop of reinker in it. When you shake the card, that mica powder is going to mix up. And I just thought it would be a fun, interactive card to make and a fun way to make this card a little bit more interesting. So you can have fun with any type of mica powder. I can't think of any that wouldn't work here. You do want to make sure that your reinker is dye-based so it mixes well with the water and it's nice and clear. I wanted to have something that was transparent because if it wasn't transparent, then you're not really going to see that mica powder mixing up quite as well. So I am taking my little mica powder pots and my reinkers, and I'm just propping these upright so that I can show you after the mica powder has settled what it's going to do. So once again, I've got 3 different colors here. You could do whatever color combination you want. I specifically chose mica powders that were a different color than the reinker that I had in here, but I wanted them to coordinate well. So I have a yellow what I'm doing now is a yellow reinker with a pink mica powder. So when it mixes up, it's going to be orange. I probably wouldn't say choose a red reinker with green mica powder because it's going to come off kind of brown. So I would choose something somewhat close on the color wheel to make sure that when those mix together and you get the reaction, or the mixing, it's going to look nice. Now here is the little Ziploc bag after I've let it sit, and you can see how it changes once I mix it up. You want to also make sure that you are closing these Ziploc bags really, really well. You don't want to chance anything leaking. So I will be checking many times throughout this just to make sure that it is completely closed. That little bit on top of that Ziploc bag, on top of the little zipper there, is actually mica powder. So it's not anything, it's not liquid, and it's not any of the reinker. It's just some mica powder dust. I'm taking some yellow tape and I'm taping off that top opening of the Ziploc bag. Once again, making sure that nothing is going to leak out and that it's completely sealed. You can use whatever tape you want for this particular step. I just wanted to make sure that there was no chance that anything was going to leak anywhere. And then I take my scissors and just trim that down just to make it look a little bit pretty. When I put the outside ones against or in front of the openings, I want to make sure that that tape doesn't go past the outside of the card. Another reason for taping it. So now that I have my little Ziploc bags done, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and just go around the outside of each one of them. Once again, making sure that nothing has leaked, making sure that nothing is wet on that outside before I attach it to my card. I also take my Ziploc bags, turn them upside down, making sure that they are completely sealed. Even though I've checked them many times, I just want to double check and make sure that there is absolutely no way that something is going to come out. Now, this is a card that I would be handing to someone to give to them. I wouldn't be mailing this myself. You probably could, say, within a box of things. I wouldn't really, with the mechanical sorting machines and stuff like that, I'm not sure how well this would stand up unless you had it in a bubbled envelope within something else that was protecting it. Once again, personally, it would be a card that I would hand to someone because I would also want to see their reaction to it. So now that I have those Ziploc bags done, I am taking some more yellow tape, and this could be any tape that you like. I'm taping them down on all 4 sides. I want to make sure that they are nice and secure, that they are not going to go anywhere. I do the 2 outer ones first, and then I'm doing the inside center one. And once again, taping that in place on all 4 sides to make sure that it is not going to go anywhere and it's very secure. Again, you can use any tape. You just want to make sure that it's some tape that's going to hold up over time and that can hold it in place. Now, you'll notice on my one on the very right, there's a little bit of a wrinkle in that Ziploc bag. I probably should have checked it before putting that center one down, and I could have adjusted it. At this point, it's fine. I'm not going to change anything. But had I noticed it before I put that center one down, I would have just adjusted it a little bit. I'm putting a faux border on the outside of this. I have that purple one there and I really like it, but I thought a black outline here would also look nice. So I'm just taking the chisel end of a Copic marker and using that to create a faux border around her. So my purple piece here, that is the piece that is going to go behind my laboratory glassware, but I want to make sure that the colors in that dye reinker is not going to be affected by the background. So I'm putting a piece of white cardstock in the center of that so I have a white backing there. Now I'm taking some foam tape and I'm going to go around all four sides, making sure to give some dimension to those little bags of water. I don't want there to be pressure on there. So I'm going around all four sides. And I actually go and do a double layer here. Once again, I want to make sure that I've got enough dimension to it. I want to be able to shake those pieces around when that card is done. And I also want to make sure that I don't have anything bowing out or warping. I want to make sure that everything on that front is nice and flat. So once I have put that first layer down, I take that backing off and then I add the second layer right on top of it. If you have thicker foam tape, you might not need to do this. This one is kind of a medium thickness. So I did find that I wanted that little bit of extra dimension there. I wanted to give those pouches some room there. So I did take, when I put the ones on the side there, they were slightly too long. So I had to cut a little bit off and I took those pieces and put them between the top parts of those jars or those openings, just to give some dimension there as well. With all of that done, I can put my mat onto my card base, and I'm just using some liquid glue here in a fine tip bottle. Once I have that glue on there, I'm going to put that on my card base. Now my card base is 5 by 7 and that purple piece is 4 7/8 by 6 7/8. Again, like I said before, I probably would make my mats a little bit smaller or a little bit larger. I did find with the dimension on this front piece and there only being 1/8 of an inch difference between the front piece and that purple piece, it was hard to layer it to make sure that those layers were even, as well as the fact that with the dimension, you see a little bit of that purple, but you don't see much. So because I'm doing a larger card here, I think there is room enough to make it a little bit smaller and to make those mats a little bit wider. I wouldn't do it at this point with those Ziploc bags in there. I wouldn't want to chance piercing anything at all. So I left it as is, but to do it again, I would make my mats a little bit bigger. So there was a little bit more room there. Now, I don't happen to have a sentiment set that has chemistry sentiments. And while that Propagation Garden sentiment set is fantastic, it's got all plant themed sentiments to it, or just kind of generic sentiments like thinking of you and happy birthday. So I didn't want that for this card. So I went on the internet, tried to find some chemistry themed sentiments that would work for this. So the one that I am using, it just says we have great chemistry. It worked perfect for this. There's a few different ones that you could choose from. I had picked a bunch of them and typed them down and then just chose which one I wanted to use when it came time to putting it on the front of the card. You'll see I use 2 different trimmers here. I like using my big trimmer for large things, but when it comes to tiny sentiments like this, I pull out my little mini trimmer. I find that it's much easier to get a little bit more precise with it, as well as to get, to be able to cut off a hair if I need to. So I do really like this mini trimmer for doing things like this, for doing sentiments, for just trimming off just that little extra bit from the side. There are little grooves in that clear protective thing that I use to line everything up, and I find I can just get more precise with it. So it's not necessarily something that is absolutely necessary, but I do find I pull it out a lot for these particular uses. So now that I have my sentiment done, I just put that to the side. The one thing that I had intended to do earlier but didn't do is in that Propagation Garden sentiment set, there is a little bubble stamp. So I'm taking some Lost Shadow Distress ink and I'm just stamping some bubbles on top of my little glassware here. It's just the perfect little accent, and I'm only doing them in a really light shade. I don't want this to be in your face, but it's one of those details that I think kind of just finishes the whole thing off. So with that done, I can now put my sentiment on the front of the card, and I'm just going to use that same liquid glue to put it on there, center it. I chose purple to go around the outside of this, but you could choose any color that you wanted that works with those little laboratory beakers. And here is our finished card. I think it's so cool how you prop it up and it settles down, and then you can mix it up by just shaking the card and it mixes the colors up and you get that little mixy looking type reaction. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have many more cards or more videos coming using this line, and I can't wait to share with you the other ideas that I have in my head. I really appreciate you being here and spending time with me. I hope you have a fantastic day.